How's it going, Giants fans? Welcome back to Fireside Giants with your boys, Alex and Anthony. And today we're taking a look at three offensive linemen we think the Giants should maybe consider signing. Of course, last couple of years, really bad. We could use all the help we can possibly get, even though Joe Shane and Brian Dable went out and actually revitalized this group of players. Obviously went out and drafted Evan Neal, Josh Azudu, and then signed Mark Lewinsky, John Feliciano, Max Garcia. We still got Andrew Thomas, Shane Lemieux, Ben Bredesen, some holdover guys looking to compete here in the trenches. But I will say that you can't really go wrong with more offensive line talent if you're the New York Football Giants. Daniel Jones, this is his time to shine. This is his opportunity to really put it all on the field, try and maximize what the Giants are giving him with, Wan'Dale Robinson, Kadarius Toney, Kenny Golladay. Saquon's back fully healthy, looks ripped as hell. So I'm hopefully, they can put together a pretty competent line this year, but we do want to take a look at a couple of free agents that might fit the bill if they want to go in and spend a little bit more money. But Anthony, before we dive into these guys, how you do today, my friend?
I'm doing great, and I really love everything that the Giants have done on the offensive line this offseason. I think that Joe Shane has done an excellent job finding talent with good value. He got a couple of good free agents that had really good value. Max Garcia being a very cheap signing, but a very reliable signing. You're getting decent offensive line play at the left guard position with Max Garcia. No, it's not going to blow you away, but it's going to be good enough, and that's all you need, and that's really what the value of the contract was worth. And then, of course, you take a look at what they got at right tackle with Evan Neal. I mean, that was a home run. And you look at what they got with right guard Mark Lewinsky. Again, a very solid player, worth of the price. I just really love the way that Joe Shane has built out this offensive line. I think there's a lot of promise in this offensive line, some really promising young players. Andrew Thomas, of course, Joshua Azudu, Evan Neal. These are young guys that have a lot of potential, but there are some veteran guys, who could also provide some pretty solid snaps. Of course, center John Feliciano, I really like him. I think that he's a good veteran. He's a tone setter in the middle of the offensive line. But one thing that I noticed with this offensive line where they could improve is depth. I think there could be better depth. Alex, can you even name who the backup offensive tackle is? I think Corey Cunningham, maybe. It might be Corey Cunningham.
That's one.
Yeah, he's one of them. He's not the best. They could improve in that regard, in my opinion. I think there are backups, veteran offensive linemen that are sitting in the free agency market right now that the Giants could look at and say, hey, you're perfect depth. You would fit in really well as maybe a rotational swing tackle, lining up next to the right tackle as a jumbo tight end, or maybe playing as a backup, a reliable backup in case one of these young guys just the pro game is too much for them too quickly, right? Say Joshua Azudu ends up getting the starting job. It's too much for him. Max Garcia is injured. Now who's your left guard? If Shane Lemieux is also there, you just want to have depth. And I think that's what the Giants need to focus on now. If they're going to make any more signings for the rest of the offseason, they're going to be depth signings. The Giants don't have a ton of money to spend, but if they're going to spend any of that money, I'd like to see them invest in more depth on the offensive line.
Look, I am just truly terrorized. Even in my nightmares, I watch Nate Solder just falling to the ground aimlessly. But let's take a look at the first guy. And his name is J.C. Treader. We've talked about J.C. Treader in the past. And if you like my Color Rush jersey, guys, Kayvon Thibodeau, Color Rush jersey, $18. DHgate. Never buying an original jersey or an OG NFL jersey that's $120 because that player always ends up leaving. And then you're stuck with this jersey, and then it hangs in your closet for like 30 years, and then eventually, like your girlfriend, wife, or whoever just throws it away, and you're like, yeah, I wasn't going to do it, so somebody was eventually going to throw it away. So always get the cheap ones. I mean, NFL makes enough money off us anyway. But guys, when you're looking at J.C. Treader, I mean, John Feliciano is a good enough player to hold it down for 1 year, maybe, but he only has like 250 overall snaps in his career at center. Can we trust John Feliciano to be a good center through and through for Daniel Jones the entire year? If he gets injured, who fills in for John Feliciano? We don't even have a backup center right now, do we? Maybe you move Shane Lemieux there, but do you really trust Shane Lemieux at center? No. Nick Gates, I don't think he's coming back anytime soon. J.C. Treader, while he might be a little bit more expensive than you would hope, if you sign him to a 2-3 year deal, push some of that money down the road. Daniel Jones most likely we're going to move on from this after the season unless he has an unbelievable year. Hopefully he can revitalize his career in that sense. But J.C. Treader, and if you're a Giants fan, you're going to love every second of this because he is arguably the best pass protecting center in football, right? We have been waiting patiently for good pass protectors on the offensive line. JC Tretter's had 5 consecutive seasons with over 1,000 snaps. The guy is durable. He's reliable, always healthy. He gave up 1 sack and 10 pressures last year, over 1,039 snaps. You know what I mean? Like, this is a guy who's not only a good pass blocker, but he's also a way above average run blocker in addition to that. So if you're looking for a guy who's going to make the center position a strong point, JC Tretter is your guy. He is the one you want to go after. Now, do the Giants have enough money? Probably not. They have $6.2 million. It's not enough really to go out and get Tretter for 1 year. You're looking at a 2-year deal with out after the second year, and then giving him a little bit of money, and then pushing some of it to the second and third seasons, probably some guaranteed money, some dead cap money for the third year if they want to opt out before that. But like, if you want Daniel Jones to really build on his skills, if you really want to see him be the best he can be, you need to have a good center. It doesn't seem to me like Brian Dable and Joe Schoen are, willing to go outside the box for this and spend a little bit more money. I think they've already kind of spent as much as they're comfortable with. They want to go into the season with like $6 million in tow. But JC Tretter is a game changer. So, what are you thinking about him? You think there's any realm of possibility that JC Tretter is in our wheelhouse of financial, exceptions?
I think it would be difficult for the Giants to be able to afford JC Tretter. One of the things to note about JC Tretter is he is a phenomenal leader. That's known. He is the president of the NFLPA. He was reelected as that, so this is not even his first term being the president of the NFLPA. So he is a very important figure in the NFL, and he's a very smart guy, and he is a phenomenal leader. But having all of those traits, those character qualities, might make you a little bit more expensive to sign in free agency. Truthfully, it really might put up his price tag. And when you really take a look at him, he has been one of the best pass blocking centers in the NFL for quite some time. If you take a look, PFF had him as a top 3 pass blocking center in 4 straight seasons, top 3 in the NFL. And the Browns did release him this offseason because they couldn't afford him anymore. He was second in pass blocking grade in 2021, second in 2022, second in 2019, and third in 2018. So there's your 4 straight seasons of being a top 3 pass blocking center in the league. And yeah, the Giants could obviously use that. They would love to have a top 3 pass blocking center in the NFL, starting on their offensive line. But here's the thing. They signed John Feliciano to be their starting center, meaning that's how much they wanted to spend for a starting center. JC Tretter is a better player than John Feliciano, and John Feliciano is already pretty much penned down as the starter because that's the budget. That's what they wanted to spend on a center. I can't imagine that the Giants are actually going to go ahead and sign another center that goes on top of John Feliciano on the depth chart and is more expensive than John Feliciano. At this point, it just seems extremely unlikely. I do think there are veterans out there for the Giants to sign that makes sense for the Giants. I mean, JC Tretter makes sense for the Giants from a personnel standpoint. He's a perfect fit. He's a good pass blocker. He's a really good player, and the Giants could use him, right? It's an upgrade on the offensive line. But the same could be said for nearly every single center on every single NFL team. JC Tretter is going to be an upgrade for most of the centers in the NFL. But there's a reason he's sitting on the free agency market right now, and it's because nobody wants to spend that much for a position like center. Center is not the most valuable position, especially not even on the offensive line. You're taking both of the tackle positions first and foremost. You're probably taking the guard positions before that as well. And then you're talking about the center. It's probably the 5th most valuable offensive line position out of all 5. And you could argue that for sure. You could argue that, being the captain, the middle of the offensive line, whatever, you're the quarterback of the offensive line. But in reality, you have a lot of help and protection when you are the center. You've got 2 guards to lean on. So you're not really, on an island the way that a tackle is. It brings down the overall value, and it makes most NFL teams scared to really pay up for a good center. And I think the Giants signing John Feliciano for the price tag that they signed him for indicates that that is the maximum that they want to spend at that center position. They don't view it as the most valuable position on the offensive line, and JC Tretter just isn't in the cards for the Giants this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, look, overspending on centers is like a luxury, right? That's like if you have your quarterback in place, you have rookie receivers, rookie cornerbacks. Like if you're the Jets, I could see going out and spending a little extra cash on like a guy like JC Tretter because they got all of their spots almost filled with rookies, like essential high price positions. So with that being said, let's move on to the next name. And that guy is actually a former Jet, Alex Lewis. So I also wanted to go after some cheaper options because, for obvious reasons, the Giants don't have any money and, they do want a little bit more competition in the trenches, I would say. Alex Lewis spent 4 years, did not play last season, 2 seasons with the Jets, 2 seasons with Baltimore. So Wink Martindale probably knows him. So, there's reason to believe that maybe there's a connection there. He has most of his experiences at left guard. So, right now, left guard's wide open for the taking. This is a Josh Azudu, Max Garcia, Shane Lemieux type of battle. I can't sit here and tell you that any three of those guys are ones I want starting at left guard. Garcia is the one with the most experience, but I think there's better options out there. You can always find guys that maybe, better scheme fit, has some more experience, whatever it might be. I think, Shane Lemieux's coming off a partially torn patellar tendon. So what do we expect from him? I'm not so sure. Josh Azud has been spending most of his reps at left tackle with Andrew Thomas, working his way back from that ankle surgery this offseason. So he hasn't even been getting reps at left guard. And then Garcia has been kind of rolling with the ones, and Shane Lemieux is also with the ones as well. So I think, injecting more talent like an Alex Lewis, who has some pretty good grades. He's inconsistent. But let's say in 2020 with the Jets, 544 offensive snaps, didn't give up a sack, 24 total pressures. He did have 4 penalties against him. Solid run blocker, probably about an average pass blocker. Look, I would take him over Ben Bredesen in a second, that's for sure. But you also look at guys like, you also look at the right guard position. That's a spot that maybe Garcia could shift over to if need be, or Shane Lemieux or Azudu. Like, you could always mix and match those guys left and right guard if you needed to. What are your thoughts on a cheaper option like Alex Lewis, just to bring in some more competition at left guard, a position that I don't necessarily feel confident about, based on the fact that, after being tortured for many years, I can't sit here and justify any confidence in any spot except for probably left tackle right now.
Yeah, and I would say adding depth at left guard is a great idea. I would love to get a good veteran to just kind of be thrown into the mix there. I love Joshua Azidu. I think he's going to win that job. I hope he does. Shane Lemieux, I'm not too crazy about. Most of you know that. And Max Garcia, I think, is just okay. And it wouldn't hurt to have just a little bit more depth on the interior of the offensive line. One thing to note, though, with Alex Lewis, he did retire in 2021, but there are rumors that he could make a return. The Titans are apparently interested. If you go on Google and you read an article about Alex Lewis, he did retire because he was injured, and then the Jets placed him on the reserve/left squad list. So he just retired because he wasn't even allowed to play for any team anyway, because he was eliminated from playing for any team when he was placed on that list. So he just retired to get off of that list and get off of the Jets. I don't blame him. A lot of players probably retire just to get off of the Jets. Makes a lot of sense. But he could come back in 2022 if a team approaches him with a good contract and says, hey, you can do this for us, and would you be interested? But there are some question marks as to whether or not he would be interested in returning to football. So do some reading on him if you are interested in Alex Lewis being the Giants' potential backup left guard. But I like him. I think that he is a good player, a good quality backup. It just remains to be seen whether or not he is going to make a return to the NFL. But if he does, I do think this is somebody that the Giants should consider.
I mean, look, the amount of times Tom Brady is retired at this point, you can never tell when a guy's going to make a comeback. And people retiring from the Jets, sure, they also retired from the Giants. Last year, we had half our offensive line retire because Joe Judge is working the crap out of them. But I don't want that to happen again.
Joe Looney signed with the team, practiced one time, had to run laps, and then just retired. That was the most bizarre thing. It was Joe Looney, right?
Houston?
The former Cowboys player. Houston. Oh, yeah. Man, I can't even remember. I just remember there was a couple of players. Yeah, I know who you're talking about, too. I wanted him to be the starter. I can't remember his name. But, yeah, there was a couple players that Giants signed. They looked like really good offensive line depth. We were excited about them. Joe Judge made them run some laps, and they just said, screw this. I'm hanging up the cleats. Yeah, that was his name, Zach Fulton. Yep. Had to run laps and just retired instead.
Bro, I'm looking at a link right now. Zach Fulton is third player in 4 days to retire. What the hell? This is an insane reality. Looking back in hindsight, really? You had 4 guys and then wow, yeah. That's crazy.
We've had a really interesting time covering the Giants over the past couple of years. It's been real fun.
Yeah, goodness great. Jonathan Harrison, didn't he retire as well? Veteran Kenny Wiggins.
Kenny Wiggins, yeah.
There's a couple guys retired. Honestly, I would retire too if I was running laps and I was like, yeah, I got my money. I'm not even guaranteed a spot. Might as well just hit the road. But the last player on our list here is Darryl Williams. So another one that would be a little bit more pricey, but he's a potential long-term solution at one of these guard spots. I know Glowinski's at right guard, so we're probably looking at left guard where he has 409 total snaps. He also has experience at left and right tackle, so probably a good swing option. The question is, does he really want to join a team where he doesn't have a cemented spot? So that's the big argument to make. But if the Giants were like, hey, like we'll give you a legitimate shot at winning left guard, and are you willing to accept that? Maybe he bites. Another team might be like, hey, we'll give you a starting right tackle job right now or right guard job right now, and maybe that's it. He has 2 years of experience with Buffalo, which is definitely relevant to Brian Dable. And then you look at Carolina, Joe Shane was with Carolina from 2015, 2016. So, he definitely has some experience with him as well. So he has connections to the Giants brass right now, when it's talking about new management, they like familiar faces. So Darryl Williams, definitely an interesting player. Gave up 4 sacks and 44 total pressures last year, but historically pretty solid run blocker, pretty solid pass blocker. He can do a lot of things for you. Has some penalty issues in 2020 when he made that transition to right tackle, once again after a couple of years not really spending much time there. So interesting, player. I don't know if he would be kind of a guy the Giants would look at unless, they had an open job for him, Anthony. But what are you thinking about Darryl Williams?
I like Darryl Williams, and I think this is the player out of the three that we mentioned that makes the most sense, in my opinion, for the Giants. I think that he's really quality depth at multiple positions. With the New York Giants, something that they've definitely valued this offseason is versatility. You take a look at Evan Neal. He's played everywhere on the offensive line. He played left tackle, left guard, right tackle. He can do it all. Joshua Zito used to play left guard and left tackle on the same drive. He would just rotate from position to position on one drive, which was just bizarre. Of course, we know Nick Gates plays all over the place, and John Feliciano also plays guard and center. The Giants like versatility. They really appreciate versatility, and John Feliciano was a connection signing, meaning Brian Dable had a connection to him, so they signed him. Darryl Williams would be a versatile player and a connection signing. He does make a lot of sense for the Giants. He's already been coached underneath Brian Dable, worked with him over in Buffalo. He's played tackle. He played guard. He also technically has a connection to Dave Gettleman because I'm pretty sure that he was drafted by Dave Gettleman back in the Panthers era. Not sure if that really matters at this point now that Dave Gettleman's gone. But Darryl Williams, again, solid veteran. He's had some very good seasons of football in the past. There was a point where people did refer to him as one of the best right tackles in the NFL. I remember that years ago. He did kind of fall off. I think he dealt with some injuries, but his career had basically a second wind because he moved positions. He showed versatility. He kind of started to phase out at right tackle, so they moved him on the interior. Sometimes that happens with offensive linemen. They get older and their body just can't handle being out on the tackle spot anymore. They're not quick enough to do it, so they move inside. You don't have to have that much lateral agility to play the guard position. So I think that's what happened with Darryl Williams. He kind of started to lose a step. They moved him inside, and again, he's just a solid veteran interior offensive lineman. And that's something that the Giants could definitely utilize. Having a solid quality veteran interior offensive lineman like Darryl Williams, who also has the ability to kick out to tackle, that's perfect for the Giants. I think that's exactly what they should be looking for if they are going to sign another offensive lineman in free agency, especially when you consider the fact that, yes, he does have a connection to Brian Dable. So I really like Darryl Williams. Out of these three players, I think Darryl Williams makes the most sense, and I don't think he would be on too much of an expensive contract. I think he'd be a pretty cheap contract, and I'd really like to see if this is something that becomes a reality for the Giants.
Yeah, I mean, look, if he was going to be a more expensive player, he probably would have been picked up already. Those offensive guards went off the board really quickly in this most recent free agent period. Looking at like Laken Tomlinson, even Glowinski, like they were gone, and they didn't get and James Daniels too. They didn't get huge contracts by any means. So really interesting there. Darryl Williams, waiting it out, trying to see if there's a spot where he can get a little bit more money, cash in, make the inflation argument. That's a point.
Yeah, and I think that this is a player that, let's say, and knock on wood for this, training camp has started, a Giants offensive lineman goes down with an injury, really at tackle or guard, any position. If there's a Giants offensive lineman that goes down with an injury at training camp, I think the first phone call that Brian Dable makes is to Darryl Williams. It makes sense. He was just with him in Buffalo. He's got the versatility. He's quality depth that can play multiple positions. I think this is a training camp signing if it happens for any team. If Darryl Williams is playing in the NFL in 2022, he's getting signed in late July during training camp. And I think that one of the teams that makes a lot of sense for him is the Giants because of the connection to Brian Dable. So if, God forbid, any of our offensive linemen go down with an injury during camp, I know last year that was something that happened, right? Shane Lemieux went down with an injury. Andrew Thomas was dealing with an injury behind the scenes to his ankle, and the Giants started picking up some low-key offensive linemen, that had connections to Jason Garrett. They did that with that guy Looney, and there was one or two other players that they had connections to, so they signed them basically off the streets during training camp. That could happen again this year. If there is an injury at any of the offensive line positions, Darryl Williams should be Brian Dable's first phone call.
Yeah, I see that argument. I think it's a pretty damn good one. It's like kind of like Logan Ryan. You have to have those guys like on speed dial if you have any familiarity with them. And Darryl Williams definitely has the experience at multiple spots where he could fit the mold. But guys, appreciate you guys tuning in to Fireside Giants. As always, make sure to like and subscribe. If you have any thoughts about these players, Lewis, if he comes out of retirement, Darryl Williams, or even JC Treader, if you would prefer any of them, if you're willing to spend the money. I know the Giants only have 6.2 mil available right now, but are you willing to kind of kick some down the road? Next year they can move on from Leonard Williams and save 18 million. So there's a lot of things that the Giants can do to open up a little bit of flexibility for the future. But I am curious to hear your thoughts, as always, in the comment section. So make sure to go and do that. We'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Giants episode.